So welcome back, or welcome to the 34th edition of the RCA Training Tip Show, where today we commence a new journey on a brand new YouTube channel, being the Road Cycling Academy channel, where myself, being an accredited road cycling coach, and Neill Stanbury, the expert bike fitter, will be sharing content with you which is designed to help you improve your performance on the bike through both bike fitting advice and cycling training tips. Today, we will be sharing a continuation of my last sit down with Neill, where we will be discussing a highly requested topic on the channel, being saddle selection, including what to do if you're experiencing saddle sores and discomfort. Now, before Neill gets into it, I wanted to mention that the cornerstone of the Road Cycling Academy is the Up-Level Road Cycling course, an online course designed for aspiring amateur and recreational road cyclists that have hit a plateau and are keen to take their performance to the next level. The course is currently open, and it only opens 4 times a year, with 50 spots made available, giving members access to 20 step-by-step video tutorials, 15 separate training programs in the Today's Plan training software, a private group where I do live Q&As, and the opportunity to ask a coach a question at any time. We're also bundling in a bonus tutorial and nutrition guide with expert sports dietitian Steph Cronin, valued at $97 USD purely for this February intake. And we're also providing a nice discount on the course in February, and payment plan options available. The course shuts in a few days' time, so I'll provide links below if you're keen. And let's get into the video.
This is your collection.
Yeah, exactly right. That's it.
Yeah, man. Tricky one, this one. So let's start with like why you would be looking for a new seat. There's 2 reasons, and you basically touched on them before. There's pain and numbness. So something hurts, something doesn't feel good, or it goes numb, and so naturally the first thought that the rider has is, I need to find a better seat. And sometimes that's actually not the right place to start. The very first thing you would do is make sure that your general position is good. So to really complicate matters, possibly every 2 weeks, I get a rider come in and say, Neill, the main reason I'm here, I can't find the right seat. I've tried 50 different seats, none of them work for me. About 8 or 9 times out of 10, the problem is not the seat. The problem is that their seat is too high, their Q factor is too narrow, their cleat position is too far forward. So there's problems with the position which are typically making them rock. So if you get a rider who's got the perfect saddle for them, it's a work of art, it feels great, and you raise their seat 50 millimeters too high, and you move their cleat position too far forward, and they start rocking on that seat, no matter how good the design is of the seat, their butt's going to hurt. And they will almost certainly start to compensate asymmetrically. So one side of it will hurt more than the other, because they're now sitting obliquely on the seat slightly due to their compensation strategy. So if the general position is way off, no saddle will ever feel good. So if they've been through 30 different seats, there's a good chance that something is way off in the position. So use that video that we possibly put out before this one or after.
Yes.
We'll see. The one about general positioning, and try and get your position roughly right. If the front end drop is excessive, the front of every seat will feel unpleasant, except for possibly an SQ Labs, because they're awesome for that. But if the bars are way too low, the front, no matter which seat you try, the front end's going to feel wrong, right? If the saddle is on a crazy angle, by accident or design, if you've put it down 5 degrees and it's a flat style saddle, you're probably just going to keep slipping off it and feel like, it doesn't feel right, but it's not the fault of the saddle design, it's the fault of the angle. So you got to make sure that the general position is good first. Your rider is relatively stable and so forth. Once they're stable, you can then isolate out the saddle being the problem, right? Now, human pelvises vary in so many different ways that it's not funny. The ischiopubic rami, which are the curved sections of your pelvis where you sit, right? People commonly think of them as the sit bones, whatever name you want to give them. They curve in 3 dimensions towards the front. They get narrower towards the front of the pelvis and wider at the rear. The 3-dimensional nature of the curve, how far apart they are, how much they splay, how much, how rapidly they curve, varies hugely between people, with almost no regard to their overall body size. So like they can be really big and broad-shouldered and solid and still have a really narrow pair of ischiopubic rami. They can be a short 150 centimeter lady and be massively wide. Women I find tend to be a little bit wider than men, although some people would debate that topic due to anatomical differences in the pelvis. So generally they're a bit wider through there, but the best thing you can do there is measure it. Just get yourself down on a piece of paper. We'll have a cut scene of we're going to measure you up for an SQ Labs in a minute, and just roughly measure how wide your sit bones are. If they're somewhere between that 110 and that 130 millimeter width, congratulations, you're roughly in the middle of the bell curve, and a lot of seats will fit you. If you start getting down below 100 mil of separation, like me, I'm 90 mil. I was super narrow there, right? I have to look for really narrow seats, right? If you're really wide, you're up around that 130, 140 mil mark or wider, you're looking for a wide seat generally. And beyond that, it gets really tricky and messy because the shape of the curvature of the pelvis is not an easy thing to measure without a 3D reconstructive CAT scan of your nether regions, which is probably not good from a radiation perspective, right?
Yes.
And even if we could do that, the angle that the rider is riding on and how much soft tissue, not even the bones, how much soft tissue is below each part of the bone there varies between people if you're big or small or skinny or whatever. So the only thing you can do is go off feel, which is what I guess you primarily want to do with a saddle anyways, go off feel. So you've got a rough idea now that you're super narrow, you're super wide, or you're in the middle of the bell curve. Sit on some different seats. Try a flat style seat. This is an Antares, one of my least favourite saddles ever designed. It has very few redeeming qualities from a fitting perspective.
I think I used it once.
Did you?
Yeah. Yes, maybe twice. It was on the giant TCR I had.
Yeah. There's some people who love these things, they don't suit a wide variety of people. It's basically a plank that you sit on. Some people can get away with these. A lot of people don't. This is an SLR. This thing's very similar design with a bit more flex built into it. So when you sit on it, it actually curves a little bit. No cutout. So, any of the flat style seats with no cutout and no divot through the center section are slightly more prone to that perineum numbness type stuff. So if you're getting that, something with a channel or a cutout like this, or the best of the lot, the SQ Labs one for unloading the front end, pretty good.
So does that suit some people not to have that cut out?
Yes.
Right.
Well, some people have no problem with it.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily suit them. They just don't get any symptoms. Chris, the bloke about that custom frame video we did about the custom frame, he's on something like that, some flat style seat. The guy rolls his pelvis forward more than anyone I've ever seen, has absolutely no discomfort from the front of the seat. He might be on an SMP now, but he can ride any seat, no problems. Whereas other people, you roll them forward slightly and they go, oh, it's hurting me there. It's friction or pain at the front. So highly individual, sensitivity to the soft tissue, the location of the soft tissue, the curvature of the bones. Your best bet is to just sit on them. Once the bike is in roughly the right position, the seat height, the setback, the reach and the drop, just try a couple of seats, borrow some off your mates and sit on them. You'll start finding that you gravitate towards a certain style of seat. Some people really love the curved style seats, anything with a bit of a rise at the rear, which tends to sort of stop you sliding back. There's a little bit more of a rise on this old Novus here. Some people love that, some people hate it. Some people prefer the thing just to be flat, right? You'll start gravitating towards a certain type of seat in a certain type of width. And from there, you can start narrowing it down. Say, well, I hate that feeling of slipping around, so I'm going to try an SMP because they hold you well, right? And I'm going to go through the SMP range and find the one that suits me because I've got a super wide pelvis, and then I'll try one of those. You just want to go through a bit of a guess and check, I guess you call it, process, but gravitate towards a certain style is generally what will happen to the person. The width can get a bit messy. Some of them measure really wide, but because they taper off rapidly, your bum actually never contacts the bits that are wide, So the Antares here, for example, it stays flat for a long time and then drops off quickly. So it's effectively wider than its number would suggest. Whereas something like the SMP, it doesn't stay flat for long at the back here. It tapers off quite rapidly. So it's effectively a little bit narrower than its total width would suggest. If you're still getting trouble and you've tried 50 different seats, there's two types of trouble that you might be getting. One is a one-sided saddle sore a lot of the time, like your friction point on one side, and that means that you're sitting oblique on the saddle or dropping one hip really badly, and it's not the saddle's fault. Don't go and try 50 different seats if you've got a one-sided saddle sore. The problem is not the seat. The problem is that you as the rider are sitting obliquely on the seat, and that then you've got to then go and find someone like myself or work through it yourself and try and figure out why you're sitting twisted on the seat. Have you got a shorter leg? Have you got, is your Q factor too narrow and you're dropping your hip to try and, sort that out? If there's a one-sided pain, it almost always means that the saddle is not the problem. So don't go and buy different seats if you've got a one-sided problem. The other tricky issues that you'll get is recurrent perineum issues, whether it's a friction pressure here at the front, behind your gentlemen's or ladies' regions or on them. SMPs are very good at relieving that. They've got a big, broad cutout through the front section here. They allow you to roll your pelvis forward really well. The best saddles that I've ever found for removing perineum pressure are these things, the SQ Lab seats, which a lot of people have asked you about since I mentioned them. And
Absolutely.
we're going to do a video. We're going to try you on one and you can see what you think about them. These things have been specifically designed to unload perineum issues, numbness, friction, whatever, and they are the best saddle I've ever seen for unloading frontal perineum pressure issues. Why would you get frontal perineum pressure issues? If assuming the position is good, if you've got a rider who rolls their pelvis forward really well, there's more likelihood of contact in those parts of the pelvis. And so for hyperflexible people who are running a lot of drop and that kind of thing, these are as good as it gets that I've ever found. They're really, really, really good. For that particular thing. They also do tend to suit a wide variety of people. Lots of people just sit on them and go, oh, that feels really good. So they're very tolerable, whereas something like this is polarizing.
Yes.
So some people I quite like it. Some people sit on them and go, I hate that. Yes. Some people sit on them and go, I love that. It's a love-hate thing. Whereas these, a lot of people get on with these. So, if you tried a lot of different styles of seat and you're still getting frontal problems or some sort of weird discomfort that you can't get rid of, try something really different in terms of the design. And, these guys, I have no professional affiliation with them except that I use them regularly because they're just good. They suit a wide variety of people, and the idea behind them is totally different to other styles of seats. You sit up on this section at the rear, this sort of shelf here, and your two sit bone points, the very bottom projections of the ischiopubic rami, they touch there and nothing else touches at the front. And the rear of it is designed to flex underneath them so that the sensation isn't too harsh. And really good design. We'll go over that. We will do a video when we fit yours onto your bike in a minute, and I'll go over the design of them a bit more because they are a bit of a favorite of mine now for resolving saddle problems that people have had trouble with seats for years. They often get on one of these and go,
Right. That's what a lot of people want.
Yeah.
You might have just sold a lot of people then and there.
Yeah.
Just in that expression.
A really good troubleshooting seat.
Okay.
If you're just having trouble with all different types.
Okay.
But the caveat to that is if you're having one-sided trouble, the seat is not the problem. It means that you're sitting obliquely on the seat.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's not an easy thing to choose the right seat for you. You really just have to trial different sort of shapes and sizes. See what just at first glance you sit on the thing and you go, oh, it feels pretty nice. That's usually a pretty good indicator that it's roughly the right shape. Yeah. And we didn't even talk about angles of the saddles or anything, but to choose the shape of them is by far the most important thing. And shape and width,
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have done a video on saddle tilt, which we
have done a little bit. If your pelvis is really wide and you choose a narrow seat, you're going to hang over and it's going to hurt on the inside here. If you've got a really narrow pelvis and you choose a seat that's too wide, you're going to sit up on it here and it's going to rub on the inside of your thighs and that sort of stuff. So, always best to just roughly measure yourself first, get an idea of whether you're super wide or super narrow, but don't take that single number in terms of the pelvis width. Don't take that single number with too many grains of salt, because I get people all the time they measure really wide but they love narrow seats, and vice versa. And it's to do with the curvature of the sit bones and how much they roll their pelvis forward. Because as you roll your pelvis forward, the contact patch, because the pubic rami go like this, the contact patch gets closer together. So you've got a really hyperflexible person and they roll their pelvis forward really well. The ischiopubic rami are much narrower where they're actually touching the seat than the number would suggest. Yeah. So you only use that number with the very simplest of intentions.